It's a quiet evening. Rain rests against the bus window. Not quite falling, not quite stopping. A cup of tea sits nearby untouched. It's gone cold now. You don't always notice when that happens. Some things change like that. Not suddenly, not loudly, just while you're looking elsewhere. There are things we only understand later, not because they were hidden, but because back then they didn't seem to matter. You see, it's not that we don't know enough, it's just timing. And by the time the truth begins to settle, it rarely arrives when it would have helped. There are moments like that, quiet ones, long after everything else has gone still. Even someone like Marcus Aurelius might have known them, sitting alone. Nothing urgent left to decide, just noticing something that had been there all along. There's a certain kind of life that looks full from the outside. Everything in its place. Decisions made. People waiting. You might think a man like Marcus Aurelius would feel that sense of arrival, but perhaps it doesn't quite work that way. He didn't choose the weight he carried. It settled onto him and stayed, even in moments that should have felt lighter. At night, the camp would grow quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just empty. He would sit for a while before writing, not immediately, as if something in him needed time to catch up. The lamp flickered. The air carried that faint mix of oil and metal. Outside, men waited for orders. Inside, there was nothing urgent left to say. He wrote not for anyone else, just to keep something from drifting too far. You begin to notice a pattern over time, not all at once. It's the way a day is treated as something to get through, the way attention is always slightly elsewhere, held back, saved for later. There's always a version of later, isn't there? Quieter, more certain, less complicated. And so things are postponed, not dramatically, just a bit. A conversation, a walk, a moment that didn't seem important enough at the time. He might have seen that, not as a grand mistake, but as a quiet habit, the sort that doesn't announce itself, only reveals its shape when there's less left to rearrange. There are small signs of it. A man staying at his desk long after the room has emptied. A bottle kept for a better day that never quite comes. Or something as simple as tea left untouched, cooling slowly while attention is elsewhere. It doesn't feel like anything is being lost, not in the moment. But time has a way of moving without asking. And when you do notice, it's usually in a quieter room than you expected. There's a certain restlessness people carry, not the loud kind. Something quieter, the sense that something needs sorting, or proving, or finishing. So they respond, quickly, most of the time. A message, a remark, a tone that didn't quite sit right. It feels small in the moment, but it stays. If you've ever walked away from a conversation and found yourself replaying it later, you'll recognize that feeling. What was said, what wasn't, what should have been left alone. It rarely ends there. The mind returns to it, adjusts it, rewrites it slightly, as if there were still time to change the outcome. Perhaps that's where it begins. The need to answer everything, to correct, to defend, to be understood properly. It can look like strength, being clear, being precise, not letting things pass. But there's another side to it, quieter, harder to notice. The more you respond, the less space there is to see. Not immediately, but gradually. You begin to carry things that weren't yours to keep. A comment, a glance, a moment that could have dissolved on its own. Instead, it's held onto, turned over, given weight. There are evenings like that. Sitting in a parked car, engine off, not quite ready to step out, going over something that no longer exists in the same way. And still, it feels unfinished. He might have known that pattern. Marcus Aurelius, I mean. Not all at once, but slowly. The way a person notices their own habits. A reaction here, a sentence there, the urge to say something, even when silence would have been enough. There's a kind of fatigue that comes with that, not physical, something else, as if the mind never quite settles, always preparing its next response, always slightly ahead of the present moment. And then, at some point, something shifts, not dramatically, just a pause that lasts a second longer than usual, a response that doesn't come, not because there's nothing to say, but because for once it doesn't feel necessary. It's easy to miss that moment. It doesn't announce itself, but it changes things, quietly, more than you'd expect. There are moments that don't look important at first. A remark perhaps, something said in passing. It catches slightly, not enough to stop the day, just enough to stay. He might have answered it once, quickly, with precision, the sort of reply that leaves no space for doubt. And for a while that feels right, clear, resolved, but something lingers, not in the words, in the weight of them. It took time to notice that not everything asked for a response. Some things settle on their own if left alone, but that isn't how most people begin. There's a habit of stepping in, filling the silence, making sure nothing is left uncertain. He learned that later than he might have liked. Much later. There are rooms full of people, voices overlapping, glasses set down, a kind of warmth that looks like connection. And yet, something doesn't quite reach. You can say the right things, at the right time, and still feel slightly outside of it, as if understanding moves in one direction, outwards, but not always back. He might have felt that too, the distance between being heard and actually being known. They look similar from the outside. Inside, they are not the same at all. That difference isn't obvious at first. It takes a while, long enough, sometimes, that you stop expecting it. There was a time when being right mattered, not loudly, just enough. A correction here, a clarification there, keeping things in order. It feels responsible, necessary even. But it comes at a cost that's easy to miss. The room shifts, very slightly. A conversation closes instead of opening. Something becomes smaller than it could have been, not because anyone meant it to, just because the need to be right arrived first. It took him time to see that being correct and being close to someone rarely hold the same place. And if you choose one often enough, the other tends to fade. There are decisions that don't feel like decisions. They happen quietly, a direction taken, a role accepted, something that seemed reasonable at the time, expected perhaps. It fits. From the outside it makes sense. From the inside, it takes longer to notice what it costs. A certain distance from yourself, small at first, then a bit more. Not enough to stop, just enough to shift things slightly out of place. You keep going, because stopping would require looking, and looking might change things. He might have recognized that pattern, only when there was less room to adjust it. And then there is the silence, not the absence of sound, something else, the kind that arrives when there is nothing left to respond to. No one waiting, no decision pressing. Just a room and time. He might have sat with it, at first not quite comfortable, reaching, perhaps, for something to fill it. A thought, a task, anything. But slowly, it changes. It stops feeling empty, becomes clearer, less crowded, as if things begin to arrange themselves without being forced. That takes time, more than most people expect. And often, it comes later, when there are fewer chances left to use it. It doesn't feel like 5 separate things, not when you're living through them. Just a series of moments, small adjustments, barely noticeable at the time, until eventually they begin to form a shape, one you only recognize when you step back from it. And by then, you tend to see it differently, There's a version of this that doesn't involve emperors. No tents. No soldiers waiting. Just an ordinary evening. A kitchen, perhaps. The kettle begins to hum quietly at first. You reach for a cup without thinking. It's a familiar movement, done so many times it barely registers. And yet, the mind is elsewhere, still on something that was said earlier, or something that wasn't. The water boils. You pour it. Leave the cup on the counter for a moment. Just a moment. But moments have a way of stretching. You turn back to it later. It's already cooled. Not completely. Just enough to notice. That slight difference. It's a small thing. Easy to ignore. Most people do. There are other versions of it. A conversation that could have been longer, but wasn't. A walk that was delayed, then forgotten. Something you meant to say, but kept for a better time. There's always a better time, it seems. Quieter, less complicated, more certain. It doesn't arrive. Not in the way you expect. Things continue instead. Work fills the gaps. Days arrange themselves around responsibilities. Quite neatly, in fact. Nothing obviously wrong. And yet, something feels slightly out of reach. Not missing. Just not quite there. You might notice it in small pauses. Standing by the sink. Sitting in the car before going inside. That brief hesitation. As if something is about to surface. Then it doesn't. Or perhaps it does. Very quietly. And you turn away before it fully forms. Not intentionally. Just out of habit. It's easy to keep going. Most people do. There's always something to finish. Something to prepare. Something to respond to. And so the present becomes a place you pass through. Not one you stay in. It doesn't feel like a loss. Not at first. It feels like progress. Movement. Things getting done. But every now and then, you catch a glimpse of it. In something small. The way a room feels at the end of the day. The way a cup of tea sits untouched again. And you realize, it isn't that time was taken from you. It's that it moved on while your attention was somewhere else. The room is quieter now. Not completely still. Just settled. The kind of quiet that comes at the end of a long day. There's a cup on the table. The same one, perhaps. Left where it was. You reach for it almost without thinking. Pause for a moment. Then stop. It isn't about the tea. It never was. There are things that become clear like this. Not all at once. Not when they would have been most useful. But later, when there's more space to notice them. You don't always know what to do with that. Sometimes nothing needs to be done. Just seen. Properly this time. And perhaps that's enough. Not to change everything, but to recognize something that had been there all along, in quieter moments. Like this one.